Good morning, everyone. Like Rebecca shared, my name is Alan Brown, and I am the Midlands Coordinator and Business Consultant, Lead Business Consultant for the Columbia Area Center of the SBDC. Today, we're going to talk about business planning. So sit back and relax. I will say that this is going to be interactive, and so I'm going to ask for your input. I'm going to start by asking if a few of you can tell me who you are and what kind of business you have, or starting or planning to start, so I can have some context and make the conversation today relatable to your business. Sarah, Rebecca,
Alan,
Antoine,
yes.
do we have the ability to do that?
They will need to comment in the chat box.
Great.
Are not able to speak out in this webinar.
All right. So if you could add comments in the chat, that would be great. Will one of you?
You can see them on here. Yes. If they ask questions, we will follow up and ask them out loud. But if you ask them specific questions, you can watch it on your chat.
All right. So let me see. So let's get started then. And if anybody adds anything, how I'm structured right now, I can't see the chat. So if you guys would share those comments with me. So I am sure that in the life of your businesses, at some point, you felt like things may have been chaotic or out of control. That's typically the life of a business owner at some point throughout its life cycle, is the business starts to take on a life of its own. In particular, when we think about what's occurred over the last 3 years, going back to 2020, through 2021, and now in 2022, we're having to deal with an environment that has been volatile, unpredictable, chaotic, and ambiguous. And those situations are kind of like the highs and the lows of what we see here on this graphic, right? So you imagine, these are the high and low points, not just of the business throughout its life cycle, but in a given day, right? You start out excited in the morning, and then you occur something that's unexpected, and you're like, this is hard. You're able to figure that out, and you get it working again. And then in the process of moving forward, you realize you messed something up. And then you're like, oh, by lunch, this is great, right? This is really, really, really great. And then you check your bank account and you're like, oh, I don't have the cash that I thought I was going to have. Right. And so in the life of an entrepreneur, these are moments that you're all going to experience. And so what we want to help you think through today is grasping how business planning can help make those highs and lows a little bit more bearable, because you're not so involved and engaged in what's only going on today, but you have a plan or a vision of the future, and you are able to focus on that instead of just solely focusing on today, right? And so what we want to talk about to some degree is helping you to reboot 2022 or to continue to expand what you've been doing thus far, right? And so a few thoughts. It's been said by Benjamin Franklin that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Right? I'm gonna say that again. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Dwight Eisenhower put it this way: in preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. You know, is there anyone who agrees or disagrees with this statement? Put it in the chat. Give you a minute to put it in the chat. Give a few seconds.
It looks like we have some hands raised, Alan, and it may be
All right.
easier to continue on if we don't get the chat comments, but I'm watching it.
All right, thank you, thank you. And also, please feel free to share information about your business in the chat. I'm able to pull it up, and I don't see any comments in reference to who we have with us today. So please do that. That's going to allow us to relate the information to you.
And also, this recording or this presentation is being recorded and will be put on our website so that it can be used for the folks that could not join us today.
So I've had people to disagree with the statement: in preparing for battle, I've always found plans. I found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And that's because a significant number of people view plans, the actual output or delivery item from the planning process, as a critical means to help them stay accountable to their goal. And I agree with them. Because in this statement, what General Eisenhower was referring to was not necessarily, that the end deliverable document is useless, but the planning process in and of itself was the most important part, because it allowed you to make the decisions that you needed to help you accomplish the goal that was at hand. And so as it relates to planning and plans, focus is helping you to go through a well-defined decision-making process so that you'll have an understanding of the key components related to your business in being successful at accomplishing what you want to accomplish, right? And accomplish the goal at hand, right? So a lot of times, what we don't realize is that, there are several stages of business planning, right? And when we think about the different stages and types, we want to focus on the particular type of plan that's relevant for us in our specific life cycle and based on the objectives that we have in front of us, right? So a lot of times, we help small businesses get started here at the SBDC. And a lot of times when an individual comes to us, they've already decided on the fact that they're going to start their business. And at that point, they're just really looking for, someone within our office to help validate that business idea and then help them get access to capital. But really, before you decide definitively that you're going to move forward with starting a business, you should take some time to determine whether or not the concept that you're wanting to put into place or to take to the marketplace is feasible. And by feasible, I mean it can actually be executed. And so through the conception and startup phase, that's really, the first step that we're trying to assist an entrepreneur in validating, is figuring out whether or not anybody wants to purchase their particular product, right? Because the last thing that you want to do is to create a product or develop a service that nobody wants to purchase. And so that's a good part of what we do here. But in addition to that, what we're also helping you to define is a business strategy. A business strategy, right? Do you have a defined method of attacking the marketplace that's going to allow you to capture market share right? By adding value to a specific subgroup of the market focused on solving a problem that they need solved. But not only that they need solved, but that they're also willing to pay for it. And we'll talk about, a problem that they're willing to pay for a little bit later. Hey, thanks, Reggie. I see you highly agree, I'm assuming, with the previous statement. So thank you. Now, so let's talk about, the types of business planning, right? If you've ever written a business plan or any type of the plans that's listed here on this graphic, put in the chat which type you've written or are in the process of writing. So why do people plan? Like, what's up with all this planning anyway, right? So here are 4 reasons or 4 statements that we generally hear around planning, right? You'll hear individuals, your peers say, isn't this anti-entrepreneurial? And typically what we get with that is, isn't entrepreneurship about shooting from the hip, right? Just taking it as it comes, not really having a clear goal or insight and methodology, in hand, right? And my response to that statement is emphatically no, right? What we found is that the best entrepreneurs do plan, right? And they plan with intention and focus around a specific goal or objective that they want to accomplish. Now, they realize that those plans change, right? And partly because I don't know if you've ever heard of the statement that all plans are accomplished in our heads, right? Every set of plans that I've ever, developed were perfect in my mind. It's executing them, right, where the challenges began to arise. And so when we think about is planning anti-entrepreneurial, what we're debunking is the myth that to be entrepreneurial, you don't have to put things on paper, right? I served in the military, and I had this command sergeant major who used this statement. He gave us the statement. He said, a short pencil is greater than a long memory any day, right? A short pencil is greater than a long memory any day. And it simply said, that in the process of capturing things, capturing ideas, putting it on paper, you're able to come back to them and you don't have to try to remember everything, right? And so business plan and planning is required in some cases as when you starting your business. A lot of times it's a great tool for communicating your business model and your milestones, particularly when you're looking for investors, when you're trying to negotiate contract with suppliers, right? And even it's a great tool to share with your employees and to attract employees, early on in the process, right? Because by sharing short versions or streamlined versions or executive summaries of your business with certain individuals, it gives them a greater sense of trust and reliability in what you're doing, which can increase their willingness to join your team and join your team at lower compensation rates, because you can structure compensation in ways that can benefit them on the upside as the business grows. And when I say compensation in this aspect, I mean salary only, right? You can lower the salary, but put in other mechanisms that allow them to participate in the growth of the organization. So great. I'm starting to see some comments in the chat. I have every plan except the exit plan. That was Lakiva, if I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So Lakiva, thank you. And Angela, you say, I've started my business plan, but need to complete it. Right. Jessica says she's in the process of writing her business strategic plan. And I see we had some individuals to share some of the things that they're doing in the market. Farmers market in underserved communities. Cassandra, oh, great sharing. Looking forward to seeing how that develops. Awesome, awesome. So efficiency, time, and money. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So efficiency, time, and money, right? And so, it's been said that we achieve 100% of the things that we don't plan for. Think about that for a moment. We achieve 100% of the things that we plan for. Another way of saying this is we miss 100% of the shots that we never take.
Hey, Alan,
right?
do
Yeah.
you mind if I interject real quick? We have someone that has asked if you wouldn't mind going over the steps again real quick.
So I actually haven't covered the steps. We're going to talk about them in a little bit later.
That sounds great.
However, if they're referencing to the previous slide on the different types of plan, right? I'll show that and I'll give a brief snippet of the focus of those types of plans, right? So feasibility plan is really focused on clarifying your concept and determining when or if you should start the business. A business strategy, typically what we consider the main business plan to be, is really focused on how you're going to capture all of the resources, right? Resources related to, what type of facilities do I need? What type of employees do I need to have? In what categories, right? What type of components or aspects do those, what skill sets do those employees need to have? How am I going to acquire the inventory that I need if my business is is heavily inventory based? How am I going to market my business, right? Who is my ideal client? And we're going to talk about ideal client a little bit later, right? And so when you think about your overall business strategy from a beginning phase, every component that's listed here should be included in some way. From your marketing plan, where you're focused on how you're going to attack the market, from a strategic plan, looking at the various strategies across the life cycle of the business that you're going to utilize, from an operating plan, right? How are you going to fulfill, how are you going to do fulfillment, right? Whether it's a service, whether you're a distribution or sales team, or whether you're manufacturing, what's the processes that you're going to utilize in order to create your product and deliver it in the marketplace. One of the types of plans that we tend to see small businesses struggle with developing the most is a financial plan, right? But that's one of the plans that we are extremely capable of assisting you with here at the SBDC. And the one that's rarely included in the business plan or in planning process in general is the exit plan, right? The exit plan, I would say is also your entry plan. And by that, I mean, you should be thinking about what's the purpose for you starting this business. A lot of time, entrepreneurs start businesses for freedom. They started for wealth, to create wealth, and they started for flexibility around their schedule. Whatever those reasons are, whatever the motivating factors that you have for starting your business, you need to think through those and then think about at what point would you be satisfied with transitioning out of your business plan? Out of your business, because every entrepreneur is going to exit their business. We hope that when you exit your business, it would be on your feet and not on your back, right? But we're going to get into the steps for developing a plan in greater detail. So hopefully that answered a part of the question that the participant had, Rebecca. All right, so let me go back. So then effective leadership, right? One of the focus of business planning is to help you define the focus of your business so that as a leader of the organization, whether you're a founder or owner or a part of the leadership and management team, you can marshal and manage resources and influence your team towards accomplishing that particular goal, right? I love this cartoon strip, right, from Dilbert. It says, I'll need a project plan to justify the resources we need to change our software. And Dilbert says, I can make those software changes in 10 seconds. Done. Good work. Now all we need is that plan, right? Because the plan is intended to help you measure one of the things it helps you do is helps you to capture your assumptions and then determine whether the assumptions you made in the planning process were accurate, to help you continue in capturing the decisions that you made that were accurate for purposes of laying the foundation of your good decision-making over time, right? To manage the risk. So here are why different people look for different things, or the different things that people look for in business planning, right? When your friends and family, in most cases, they don't really know what to look for in a business plan. A lot of times is really focused on just getting a document because they've heard people talk about you should get a business plan when you support or invest in a small business, right? To get a better idea of what the business is doing. But a lot of times your friends and family wouldn't know a bad business plan, right, if they saw it. When it comes to lenders, as it relates to acquiring debt financing, they're looking for your ability to repay, and your business plan is going to help them determine whether or not you've captured the right assumptions or addressing the right risk in determining whether you can afford to acquire the financing via debt from them, right? Their primary goal is to reduce risk, right? They want to know how you're going to use the money, how much money, how long you're going to need it for, what do you have as collateral that can secure the financing that you are requested, and they look for collateral as a secondary source of repayment if you default on the primary source, right? How much can they get their money? How much money can they get back if you default, right? That's what they're looking for when they look at collateral. They're looking at your credit rating, and they're looking at the cash flow, right? How much money is coming in on a consistent basis, and does that money, does that cash flow, is that cash flow enough to cover the payment of the loan, right? Private investors, where they're looking at reducing risk. Also, some things that they're really focused on is how fast can you grow, right? They want to know if they put their money in your company, how long is it going to take to get their money back, plus actual return on their investment, right? And so in order to do that, they're addressing your market size, market growth, the competitors in your marketplace, and how fast your company is growing and how fast the market is growing, right? Because they want to be able to solidify lead time before they think they can get their money back, right? The time of how long they think they're going to be able to, it's going to take you to generate the return on their investment, so that they can know how long before they'll be able to invest in other companies similar to yours, right? And the ability to ensure return, right? When when they're looking at the ability to ensure return, they're looking at the leadership, specifically the owners, but also the leadership team and its ability to execute on the plans and strategies that they have developed. And they're looking at your education, right? Where did you go to school? They're looking at, the scope of the particular market, right? They're looking at not only the scope of your specific market, but your adjacent markets and whether or not your product or service can be sold in markets that are not directly, that's what I'm looking for, that your product cannot directly be sold in, right? And I use this as an example, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek example. How many of you have ever used a shoe as a hammer, right? I'm sure at some point, almost all of us have ever used a shoe for a hammer, right? The shoe wasn't intended to be utilized as a hammer, but depending on what type of shoe it is, it could get the job done, right? And so when I talk about adjacent markets, that's what I'm talking about. What other problems could your product or service solve that are in markets adjacent to the primary market you're looking to sell your services or product in? And then as I mentioned earlier, they're looking to figure out the exit strategy, like how long is it going to take for them to exit this particular business. Any questions or concerns about that? Comments? Awesome, right? So we'll keep moving. So now, right? So when we talk about a business plan, overall, we're looking at these specific components of a business plan, right? I mean, on the left, there are 5 sections of the business plan, that we're looking at. And on the right, there are 7. I see in the chat that Tatanese asks, do you always have to have collateral? Yes. You always have some form of collateral. And we're not going to get into a deep discussion about the different types of collateral, but I do believe that later on in the series that we're, there's going to be a discussion about, how to finance your business.
Absolutely. And also, there's the opportunity for you to have a one-on-one conversation with a consultant like Alan to kind of discuss that further as it relates to your specific business.
Yes, but Tatanese, in general, you always have to have some form of collateral, right? Because the lender, particularly when you're looking at debt, the lender is looking for some secondary source of collateral. As it relates to the basis of the business plan, right? We have 5 specific areas on the, if you're looking at the screen on the left-hand side and 7 on the right, you have your executive summary, right? Your history and why of your business, location, resources, concept, industry, description, market analysis, marketing plan, right? There's a distinction between the two. Your goals and milestones, timeline, management team and key partners, which we're really identifying the capacity of the individuals that are leading or running the organization to execute. And then we're looking at the economics, the risk and assumptions, and then any partners or available resources that we want the party reading the plan to have access to, but not necessarily include in the whole, in the primary plan itself.
Alan, there is a question in the chat box that asks why you have to have collateral when you have a good credit score, like at 725, and why is it easier to get a mortgage or a car loan than a business loan?
So addressing the credit score issue, right? And so there are a framework that lenders use called the 5 C's of credit, right? And all lenders use this framework or a similar framework in making decisions around lending, right? And it's to manage risk. First of all, we have to remember that the money that a bank has doesn't belong to the bank. It belongs to the people who place their deposits at the bank. The bank leverages that money to lend it to you and I, whether that's on a personal level or a business level, right? Those 5 C's of credit, I'll give them to you right quick, are capital, conditions, capacity, collateral, and character. Now I'll remind you that, there's a webinar that's going to be provided and conducted later on in the series that will get into more detail of this. But for the purpose of our conversation today, remember the bank is managing risk, right? All they want is their money back, right? All they want is their money back. And those 5 C's are capital, conditions, capacity, collateral, and character, right? Collateral is a secondary source of repayment if the primary source fails. The primary source of repayment is going to be your cash flows from the business, right? And so that's why planning is so important, right? Because you want to go through the planning process, because when you go through the planning process, it helps you assure more certain that you accomplish the goal that you want to accomplish of acquiring customers who are willing to pay you for the work that you do, right? The income or monies or revenue or sales that you receive from a client, right, pass through your hands as a business owner and produce what is called net income, right? And the net income is what's remaining after you paid all of your expenses. The bank is looking for that as the primary source of repayment, but just in case you default, right? And people have defaulted, right? So as a way or a means to award loans in the marketplace to keep lending, they have to figure out a way to capture the defaulted monies when an individual doesn't meet their obligations through the primary source by having a secondary source as collateral. The reason why business lending and personal lending is different is because it's focused on the source of the income, right? You ever notice when you're getting a personal loan, they ask you for all of your personal sources of income, right? Because your ability to repay for an individual is based on your individual income needs, right? Specifically the work that you do yourself or the individuals in your household. For a business, it's not necessarily based on my individual work within the business. It's based on my or your peers that's on the call's ability of their businesses to produce the revenue, right? And so one is much riskier than the other, right? So in general, that's the difference between, right, the importance of why they look at collateral and why it's much easier for an individual to qualify on an individual level for funding through a financial institution than it is for them to qualify for a business, right? Lending to a business has much more variables and risk involved than it does to an individual. So hopefully that answered your question. So as it relates to markets, in the last probably 20 years now, when you think about the brands or logos that's presented on the screen, none of those companies are currently in existence anymore, right? Over that period of time, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies that were in existence, 15, probably 20 years ago now, are extinct. Right. A lot of the major brands that, I utilized or frequent growing up are out of business. And in part because they failed to recognize market shifting during their operation. And so what planning does, it helps us as entrepreneurs, as business owners, to stay abreast of what's happening in the marketplace so that our business doesn't go out of business and end up extinct like these brands, right? If you've ever utilized or spent money at any one of these brands, right, post it in the chat. I've utilized growing up Kodak. I actually utilized all of those brands except for Tower Records. There were never a Tower Records in the communities that I lived in, right? So we got a Blockbuster, all right? And so in order to stay abreast, we have to have a formal process of capturing and processing data so that we can use it in the way that can be beneficial to us. Now, this guy, by the name of Jeff Bezos, who I think at this point if it's not the largest, is certainly one of the largest corporations on the planet, says that their success at Amazon is and was a function of how many experiments they do per year, per month, per week, per day, right? How many experiments, right? And so when I talk about experiments, I'm talking about how many tests you run in your business to determine whether or not you're creating and adding value to your perceived customer, right? And in that process, what we're looking to do is to validate that our business model is still operational and effective so that we can fully clarify that our business plans will help support and capture the value that we're creating in our marketplace, right, through sales. So when I talk about business model, I'm talking about how a business creates and delivers value to the customer, right? It's simply a discussion of how are you making money as a business, right? What are you doing in the marketplace that allows you to capture value from your clients and validating consistently over time that the way that you're doing that still meets your overall objectives and plans of growing your business, right? A business plan is what we call a blueprint, right? Some people call it a map, right? But it helps you to clarify how you will operate. Really, it helps you to figure out what are the steps that you will take in order to accomplish your goal in the marketplace of capturing value. Right here at the SBDC, when we think about your goal, there are three things that you need to think about, right? You want to think about where do you want to go, where you are now, and how are you going to get from here to there, right? How are you going to get from where you are now to where you want to go, right? It's just like, planning your trip to get to work in the morning, right? You have to figure out the best route that you're going to take in order to get there at the appointed time that you've decided to get there. In business, we want to think about those components as well, particularly because we've identified that markets are constantly shifting, particularly in today's, in today's world, markets are shifting constantly, right? And so in the process of developing our business model, what we do here at the SBDC is we use a tool called the Lean Canvas. And we really want to figure out what problem you're attempting to solve, right? What problem you're attempting to solve here in the left-hand corner, for what customers, your customer segments, right? And then how are we going to reach them? What channels? A major component of this is, why are they buying from you, right? What's the unique value proposition that you're presenting to them that would cause them to be compelled to raise their hand to learn more about your solution, right? And so what we have been able to identify, that if we can get 60% of this box completed, right? And where the dots match between the different boxes, we call this the 9 building blocks of every business. If we can get 60% and feel confident about 60% of the content in these boxes being accurate and connected, there's a strong probability that your business can survive. You notice I didn't say be successful, I said survive, right? And by surviving, I mean get through the first 3 years of business operation, right? And that's one of our primary goals with startup clients, is to get you from concept, formation and launch, and then to stability. Let me say that again: to get you through concept, formation and launch, and then to stability or stabilization, where you're not stabilization is that period where you're not highly concerned about whether or not you're going to be able to stay in business. At that point, you've been able to establish a history of sales performance, and your current infrastructure that you have in place, you can manage. And at that point, what the next objective is, how do you grow and scale your business? Angela says, are forms like the Lean Business Canvas model downloadable on your website? They're not, but I can make a version of this available to Rebecca so that you can get it with the slides if she provides us the slides. Awesome, right? And so one of the things that we really want you to think about as it relates to the business model is that your business model actually determines how you make money. Let me say that again. Your business model actually helps you to determine how you make money, right? Because your business model is really what you're selling to your client. And what we found is that learning, right? And not only learning, but the speed of learning is the new unfair advantage, right? And a lot of that has to do with how technology has infiltrated every component of our lives. Information is literally at our fingertips. And because information, can't necessarily be hoarded the way that it used to, right? We have access to it. And so that through that access, we're able to make decisions and take action, right? So your ability to outlearn your competition, right? In order for you to build what customers want so that you can stay relevant to them and grow your business, right, is what's going to keep you competitive in the marketplace. And in order to do that, we use the business plan as the tool that we use to aggregate the information that we capture through and relate it to those 4 components that are listed on the screen, so that we can organize the information in a way that we can utilize it to make decisions, right? And so when we think about the basic business plan, there are 4 must-have sections that you need in every plan, right? You need to have your concept clearly identified, right? Clearly identify what's important to your clients, to your customers, right? Your value proposition, your product or service offerings, and your pricing strategy. And then make sure that those components are tailored to meet the people in the marketplace that are willing to transfer money for those products and services, right? In order to do that, you need to understand your competition, your target market, and your strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats in relationship to you and the marketplace. And then, right, the economics of that, your funding needs, your financial projections, right? And when we talk about funding needs, we talk about the uses and sources of the monies that you're gonna need in order to grow your business, and then documenting the risks and assumptions associated with your business, so that as we go through this planning process, we can determine what assumptions we made in our business in the planning process on how we're going to execute our plan to determine if they were right or if they were wrong. Right. And that's a critical component in your long-term success, is determining whether the decisions you made were false or true. Right. And that's the critical component. I'm working with a client now who's entering her third year of her business. She's been able to get to a certain point within her business, and so, but it's not where she wants to be. So we're going back and reviewing the original business plan, capturing those assumptions, and then using those as the foundation for what we're utilizing to structure her marketing plan and strategy going forward. Right? We found that some of the assumptions we made were true and some were not. And so then we're exchanging, right, ideas and assumptions about the things that were not in the business plan so that we can test those, right? We're running an experiment. Let me say that again. We're testing new assumptions. We're running an experiment to see if the assumptions that we're making now will ring true, right? And if they ring true, we're helping to capture the basic fundamentals of her business model and her business, right? And so, right, basically doing if then, right? If this is correct, if this statement is correct, then we should expect these results. If it's not correct, then we need to try another assumption and see what it yields so we'll know what results to expect. That's how you get to a period of stabilization. You basically know what to expect as it's related to your business, right? And so when we think about these must-haves related to the plan, we want to align them to the business model, right? And so, if you don't remember anything else that I talk about today, I want you to remember this statement: an opportunity is equal to a problem plus a solution, right? An opportunity is equal to a problem plus a solution. And it's going to be on the next slide. And so you can see it with your eyes, what I'm saying, right? But I bring that up specifically here, right? Because our concept must have a problem and solution, right? Think of our two boxes here, a problem and a solution, right? That can be communicated effectively to a market through its value proposition. Let me say that again. An opportunity, which is equal to a problem plus a solution, must have a market that it addresses and that it communicates effectively the solution to that problem via its value proposition, also known as its unique value proposition. And as I stated before, right, you must include the economics in every component of your plan, right? Because you got to figure out what type of revenue your actions are going to produce and the cost structure or expenses that are going to have to be incurred in order to produce those actions, right? And so when we talk about the must-haves for your business model, is these items that are listed here. So can I please repeat the last statement? Lakiva, I've said a lot and I'm not specifically sure which component you're referencing, but I will say, I'll say this: a concept must have. Oh, so don't worry about that. I'm gonna move to the next slide, and it's on the next slide on related to the opportunity. Right. So let's talk about concept must-haves. Right. Anybody ever seen, right, Lay's oven-baked barbecue potato chips? Right. They basically have their compelling concept expressed on the cover of the bag, right? Right. Your basic opportunity is what you do and why, right? And remember, I said that an opportunity is equal to a problem plus a solution. Right. A lot of times we spend out the bulk of the time as we're making the decisions about whether we start a business, focus on a solution. But we should spend ample time clarifying and defining the problem so that we can make sure that we have what's called problem solution fit. Meaning, when you combine the problem and solution, the solution, right, reduces or removes the problem to the point that individuals are willing to pay for it, right? The solution reduces or eliminates the problem to the point that individuals are willing to pay for it. That's when you have a real opportunity, right? And the concept must be clear, compelling, right? Must have a detailed plan of action. And the value proposition revolves around what we call the market pint. And PINT is an acronym for problem, issues, needs, and trends, right? And so what you can think about is where you see the word problem, you can replace the word problem with market pint, right? Market problems, market issues, market needs, market trends, right? Because all of those could create a viable issue, right? That someone would be willing to pay to have it go away, right? Problems, issues, needs, and trends. Right. And so, when you're creating your concept, your client or potential client should be able to easily identify what you're selling, right? What you're trying to do. And it relates to the bag of Lay's, right? Oven baked barbecue chips, right? So obviously they're looking for individuals who enjoy eating barbecue chips, and they're looking for individuals who feel that regular chips are highly saturated in fat, right? Provide more calories than they want to eat or acquire through their bag of chips, right? And how do we know that? On the bag, it says 65% less fat, right? So this bag of chips is clearly identifying the things that are important to the people who are interested in purchasing this product. They're interested in less fat barbecue chips, right? And you want to make your concept, as you identify it, right, and communicate it as clear and definable as possible. All right. And so oftentimes what we see that entrepreneurs can vocalize their concept very well, but it's hard for them to put it down on paper. And when they do, it becomes convoluted and confusing. And so you have to be clear and straightforward. And that's one of the reasons why we use the lean canvas, because it forces you to synthesize your idea and concepts that you want to utilize in starting, establishing and forming, launching your business and growing it into those 9 boxes, right? And you can't use font that's so small it's hard for us to read, right? So it forces you to be succinct in the way that you communicate what you're doing in your business, right? And so most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with, Uber, right? And Uber clarifies its value proposition as such, right? Value proposition is a concise statement that summarizes why customers should buy a product or use a service, right? The statement should serve as a mechanism to convince potential consumers that one particular product or service, or your particular product or service, will add more value or better solve a problem than other similar offers, right? Uber's value proposition is always the ride you want, the best way to get wherever you're going, right? Simple and concise, right? And so that's what we really want to think about in how we clarify and define value propositions, right? And then think about, the value in a business sense relates to the monetary worth to your client, right? The value in business sense relates to the monetary worth to your client. So for the cost of your product and service, what do they receive in terms of technical and economic service and or social benefit? Excuse me, let me take a right. So Uber describes itself as a ride sharing company. I'm gonna read a couple of things and share them with you, right? In demand terms, in a 2018 B2B survey, more than half, 64% of respondents noted that one of the most important variables when evaluating solution providers was a sales team that demonstrated knowledge of their company and had insights into their problems. Let me summarize that for you. When you in a survey that was done in 2018, when a group of customers was asked what's important about working with potential vendors, they determined that having a sales team for from the potential vendors who understood the problems, issues, services, and solutions that they could utilize in order to help them accomplish their purpose and goals, right? And so your clients are looking for you to be able to understand what they're dealing with and to provide services, products, right, that help those things go away. And so it's extremely important that as you go through the process of identifying what your customers are looking for, you understand what they're experiencing and you communicate what you're experiencing in the sales process, right? And so when we look at Uber, when we look at their performance, right, as it relates to annual revenue, right, we're able to see that through identifying how they clearly support their target market, they were able to go from, they were able to go from $0.4 billion in 2014 to $18.3 billion in 2021, right? So that's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. In a period of 7 years, they went from $0.4 billion to $18.3 billion. Now, I'm not telling you that you can grow your business into $1 billion business. I'm also not telling you that you can't. But what I am telling you that is through the use of the concepts and frameworks that we're sharing with you today, you can grow your business And then in growing your business, most likely, accomplish the overall goals for which you started your business in the first place. Right. And so when we think about their revenue by segment, here is how their look at how their 2021's revenue by segment is broken out, right? They had 4 basic segments: mobility, delivery, freight, and other, right? So instead of staying purely a ride sharing company, right? They've added business segments to be able to grow their revenue base. I'm gonna go back and share a word I shared with you earlier: adjacent markets. Remember, we had a conversation about adjacent markets, right? What Uber is telling us is that they're really in the transportation business. Ride sharing was one of the primary means that allowed them to attract investors and grow market share. And then through that market share and through the fact that they now are large enough to do additional forms of activities in their business, they're now looking at other ways to grow their business by focusing on not only mobility, but delivery, freight, and other. What I'm interested in is this other category, because I guarantee you that if there's a other category that's doing $0.4 billion in revenue, that there's a category in there that they're looking to expand that we'll begin to see in years to come, that there'll probably be 5 or 6 segments that they're generating revenue through. Right. And so thank you, Lakiva. Hopefully that's what we're presenting and what's coming across here, that just through some systematic focus and intention, that you as an entrepreneur should be encouraged, because that's how all businesses got started. At some point, every business was a startup. Every business was at some point a mom and pop or a small business, right? And it's through intentionality and focus that all of the Fortune 500 companies that we see today accomplish the goals and objectives and scale that we now see in the marketplace. And if you put those same frameworks into place for you, you can accomplish the same thing, right? And so I'm going to move through the last few slides because it's after 12 and we don't want to keep you all day, right? And so one of the key things I do want you to take a basic understanding from is the difference between markets and industries. When you hear the word market, you should be thinking about customers. You should be thinking about people, right? When you hear the term industry, right, you should be thinking about all the other players in a particular marketplace. That includes your competitors, your suppliers, and other support or sales companies, right? And that may be related to distribution, packaging, and et cetera, right? So customers, right? Customers are the ones who give you money, or should I say, who conduct business with you from a transactional perspective of buying your product, right? They may be different from the end user, right? And what I mean by that is we think about it when we think about Facebook, right? Facebook doesn't make its money, or at least it didn't initially make its money through the end user, which was the individual, right? They made their money through marketing and things of that nature. Right now, they make their money through end users because they now on their platform allow end users to market or pay to market to individuals in their platform, right? And so when we think of consumer customers, you should be thinking about age, gender, location, income, occupation, education level, right? And those types of things so that you can describe, right, who they are. right? We want to know who they are, right? How they're different and what characterizes them, right? That's when we talk about segmentation, right? And we want to quantify how many there are, right? How many there will be, right? What's the future look for that particular segment, and what's their incentive and ability, right, to spend money or to give you their money. And we do that by creating what's oftentimes either called an ideal customer, right, or avatar and buyer persona. Right. And so what we have here is we have a sample buyer persona, right? And this particular buyer persona is referenced as Jill Anderson, right? And Jill is looking for a site that will simplify the planning of her business trips, right? And so some of the brands that Jill usually utilizes when she's going on a trip are Kayak, Expedia, Ace Hotel, and Uber, right? Some of the motivations that she have is price, comfort, convenience, speed, and loyalty, as in loyalty miles, right? And so we go through that whole process, right, to be able to identify a particular customer, right, and clarify that particular customer as a category or a segment of customers that we can then tailor our marketing message to, so that we can market specifically for them to help them understand that we can solve their problems, right? And the problems or frustrations that Jill has, right, this particular customer segment has, is there's too much time spent booking, right, because she's busy, too many websites visited per trip, meaning she wants a simple, streamlined process based on a website that she can trust, right? And she's not terribly tech savvy, so she doesn't want to have to, know how to write code in order to schedule and book a trip, right? And so you want to go through the process of identifying and clarifying these types of categories and information around your customer, so that you can better market to them, so that you can capture value, right? And then when it comes to the economics of a business plan / business model, here are the things that you want to be able to capture, right? Most importantly, what you want to be able to identify are your main costs, whether they're fixed and variable, right? And then the price of your product, so that you can create a profit, right? And not a broad profit, but a profit per item sold, right? You want to understand the economics of your business, so that if you're selling 5 hours of service, or you're selling a specific widget or gadget, right, that you know how much per hours of service or per widget or gadget, how much profit you make per item. That's called unit economics, right? And then when we understand the capacity or ability for you to sell a multiple of those products or service, helps us on a broad scale understand your economic capacity, your financial capacity, your ability to grow your business, right? And so I mentioned, having a source of documents that you might not necessarily include in the main focus or aspect of the plan itself. Here are some additional attachments that you would include in the appendix, right? Your resume, owner's financial statements, credit reports, copies of leases or mortgages, purchase agreements, letters of reference, contracts, and legal documents, right? The more of these items you have that are mentioned on the left, the more believable individuals will think your business plan is, right? Particularly when it comes to sales, the more contracts, purchase agreements, from particular clients that you have. With a lender or investor, that means you have a viable market opportunity, and that's what we're looking to help you clarify in the process of help you developing a plan. And then it relates to the financial documents. Here's some of the standard items that you'll need. Most definitely cash flow statement, balance sheet, and income statement. And then when it comes to your personal side, your personal balance sheet, which has your net worth, right? And also has listed on it some of the items that the lender could use potentially for collateral. Okay. And then let's see, understanding your financial reports. These items, as mentioned on the previous slide, are the things that we really want to include, because when an individual reads your business plan, they don't read all the way through, right? What they do is they read the executive summary. After reading the executive summary, they go to the economics components. They look at your financials and see if your financials are realistic. If those things are realistic, they'll start digging into the financial documents to see what's listed on them, right? So that they can begin to address the 5 C's. And then if those items seem to be in line, they'll set it aside, give you a call, ask you some questions to validate what they've read. And if it makes sense for them to go forward, when they get ready to go through the complete underwriting process, they'll read through the rest of your business plan to be able to understand really what it is you're doing, so that they can convince the bank that you're worth loaning money to, right? And so very rarely will they read the whole business plan in one sitting, right? Because they're busy and they don't want to waste the time to spend to read a business plan that they're not going to fund. But if they think that they're going to fund it, they need all the information there in a concise format. So when they come back to it, in order to convince everybody else that it's worth funding, they have the information in a concise format, so that they have the information needed to document. All right. And then, right, we talk about break-even point, for purposes of our discussion today, and because we are pushed on time, I'm not going to go into this in detail, right? But generally think about you have to understand and calculate your break-even point, because it helps you to clarify how much money you need to bring in your business within a given period, so that you can stay in business, right? Understanding your monthly break-even point and your yearly break-even point is important because of that fact. But then it also helps you to understand when you become profitable within the business. I see Tatanishi said copies of leases and mortgage for the business, correct? Right, that's copies and leases of the mortgage for business purposes. Now, on the personal side, and we going back to that collateral component, if your real estate that you're going to put up as collateral, your personal home, or if you have rental property that you're going to put up as collateral, they'll ask you for information regarding those real estate properties as well, right? And so, but primarily on the slide, I was referencing copies of your business leases and mortgages if you own commercial real estate, right? As it relates to risk and assumptions, right? This demonstrates to the reader that you fully understand what you're getting into, right? This speaks to the character component, right? You have to prove to the reader that you understand the market dynamics for your particular business, and that you have the wherewithal to ability to manage your business effectively within them, so that you can get to a point of stability and then a potentially growth, right? Your risk and assumptions, in your risk and assumptions, you want to address your pricing strategy. Like, how did you come up with your price, right? How did you come up with your costs, and how did you determine your volume and sales in order to be able to generate the revenue you need to cover all your expenses, right? This is an opportunity for you to show the reader that you understand, right, the opportunity at hand, right? You understand the problem that the clients have, and you understand the solutions, right? And you can bring those two together in order to provide revenue, right, for your business, and be able to pay back the loan or grow the business to a point where the investors can get their initial investment plus the expected return back from their investment. And then here are the biggest pitfalls, right? All big ideas and no details, right? You don't really clarify the support that you needed, right? Jargon is overly utilized in the business plan, where you assume everyone understands, right, the industry jargon. And your writing style, a lot of people write like they talk, right? And so the same words that they would utilize in a conversation, they put it in their business plan, right? And that's not how you want to write a business plan, right? And then realism, right? And one of the things that we always see is, if I can capture 1% of the market, right, everything would be great. And that's not a plan, right? And that's not realized, because what does 1% of the market mean, and how are you going to capture it, right? And so understanding, how things move in your markets, in the market for your industry, not using what's closest at hand, meaning not using the resources and tools and support systems that you have around you to be able to capture the market around you. One of the things, concepts that we often share with small business owners is that there are riches and niches. And that statement, combats the statement that I want to sell to everyone. Well, you can't sell to everyone because you're not large enough to sell to everyone. You have to have a particular product or service that meets the problem, that focuses on a specific group of customers' needs. If you can meet their needs, right, solve their needs, and generate revenue that covers your expenses, you can then, right, go to adjacent markets and sell your products there, right? And they don't provide scenarios, right? They say, well, I'm gonna generate $1 million in year one, right? Did you know that less than 4% of all small businesses in existence ever reach $1 million in sales? Let me say that again. Less than 4% of all businesses ever reach $1 million in sales, right? And so that 4% includes all your major companies that you service or you purchase products from now, right? Less than 1%, less than 4%, right? And so the probability that you're going to meet $1 million in sales in the first year is very rare. Not impossible, but very rare. And then flexibility versus rigidity. Predicting the unpredictable. Having the ability to see around the corners, and the ability to see around corners really depend on how great and in depth your marketing research is, right? And that's one of the things that we can do here. We can help you get some marketing research to help you understand what's happening in the marketplace, and we do that at no cost to you. And then continuity and consistent. Does the numbers and the verbiage in your plan match, right? You'll say that your goal is to capture 1% of the market, but you don't show what 1% of the market is from a financial perspective. And so to us, that's just some high idea that you have that doesn't have any detail. Like, it's a big idea with no detail. You haven't showed us how you're going to do it, right? And so some key takeaways, right? Everyone needs a plan, right? Don't plan to fail, because if you do, you'll don't fail to plan, because in failing to plan, right, you plan to fail. So don't plan to fail, plan, right? Determine the type of plan needed and follow a well-defined planning process. Pace of business has changed. The pace has changed, and so you must keep up and address that change, right? And by doing that, we focus on the speed of learning. And so we're constantly doing an assessment of our markets. We're doing surveys and helping them figure out what's important to them and if their desires have changed, right? Remembering that your business model is your product, right? Your business model, how you make money, is your product. And if you constantly maintaining your business model, right, you'll continue to make money, right? Your concept is the opportunity plus your value proposition, and avoid the business plan pitfalls. Those are key takeaways from today, right? So if there's some questions that were in the chat, Rebecca, I'll take those now. If not, it was a pleasure talking with you all today and sharing you some of the major components around business planning, around having a business model and why those are important. I'll see you on the other side.
All right. And if you could stop sharing your slide real quick, Alan, I am going to share mine. I want to thank everyone for coming today and attending. Alan, thank you so much for presenting. It was a great presentation. We got some wonderful questions and you appeared to answer most of them. If there are any questions that were not answered today, please reach out to myself. I'm Rebecca Hines, not Sarah Hines. I'm just using her program today. But Antoine Gleaton, who is our HBCU coordinator, he is also on this webinar, and you can reach out to Antoine or myself. And also just another quick reminder that our Bridge podcast launched earlier in the last week or so, and you can access that on our website, scsbdc.com/bridge. By the end of the day, we should have all of our remaining Bridge training sessions on our website so that you could register for future sessions. I know Alan mentioned a few of them today as he was going through his presentation. So by the end of the day, they should be up on ours so that you can register on our website so you can register as well. And we will have a survey and a follow-up email sent out to you after the conclusion of this session. So thank you so much. And we hope that you have a wonderful Thursday afternoon. Thank you.